Hi, this is Brian Grossman. I am a hobby photographer, a Nikon collector, and the self-published author of the totally awesome Nikon film cameras. Which one is right for you? $3 worth of knowledge guaranteed. Today I want to talk about the 35mm f2.8 manual focus Nikkors. There were 4 versions made. You're looking at 2 of them right now, the 2 worth having in my opinion. And I want to talk about them and talk about why these 2 that you're looking at are the 2 versions that you should buy as opposed to the others. So we have in front of us a Nikkor S 35mm f2.8. This lens was in production from 1962 to 1974. That's a nice 12-year run. And it was preceded by another lens also called the Nikkor S. The S simply stands for 7 elements. So the preceding lens was also a 7-element design. But you can distinguish the earlier version by the focal length indicator. The focal length on the earlier version is marked in centimeters, not millimeters. So if you find one of these which is marked f equals 3.5 centimeters, you have a highly collectible but optically inferior version of the Nikkor S 35mm f2.8. Alright, so this lens was then followed by this one. Interestingly, this Nikkor S, most Nikkors of the scalp metal focusing ring variety, around 1971-72 or so, they added multi-coating. This is a single-coated lens. Nikon added multi-coating beginning in 1971 and indicated that on these earlier version lenses with a letter C following the S. So there are no multi-coated versions of the Nikkor S. There is no Nikkor SC. It does not exist. Why? I'm not sure, but if you want the multi-coated version, you got to upgrade to one of these. So this is known as this is an early AI version, although it is identical to the K series. After the metal focusing rings were replaced by rubber focusing rings in 1974, although the AI system was not introduced until 1977. So the rubber focusing ring pre-AI lenses are referred to by collectors as the K series. So this right here is identical to the K series in every respect except the AI configured aperture ring. So this lens was then followed by a 35mm f2.8 AI series, which had 5 elements. That is the same optical configuration as the Series E lens, indicating a major step down in optical quality. Why Nikon did that, I don't know. But it is unmistakable that this lens, the 6-element version, at some point it was phased out. It was phased out in I believe this was in production from 74 to 79. So in 1979, around the time they introduced the Series E series, this optical formula was replaced with the 5 elements and 5 groups, similar to the Series E. So, how do I tell this from this version from the subsequent version? Well, in order to do that, you need to look at the hyperfocal marks. So the hyperfocal marks, or the depth of field scale, you can see on this lens, are on the barrel and which extend up underneath the focusing ring. You see, as I turn the focusing ring, it moves up to expose these hyperfocal marks right here. So that style is very characteristic of the K series, and in this lens was maintained into the AI series as well. I don't have a 38-2.8 late AI or AIS, but I do have a 28-3.5, which has the same hyperfocal mark placement. So if you see a 35-2.8 with the hyperfocal marks here, which appear on a black painted section of the lens barrel between the chrome ring and the focusing ring, then you have the 5-element version. You notice that on this lens, as I turn it, this part moves, but the distance between the focusing ring and the rest of the barrel doesn't really, it does move very slightly, but not much. and there's certainly not enough space in there to put these hyperfocal marks, so they did it like this. But if you see a 35-2.8 with hyperfocal marks here, that's the 5-element version. A 35-2.8 with the hyperfocal marks here that extend up under the barrel, that's the more desirable 6-element version. This is the one you want to look for. Okay. So what else do I know about these lenses? Well, I've got some information both in print and online. And I want to start off with Aaron Sussman's book, The Amateur Photographer's Handbook. This is the 8th edition, released in 1973. And on page 67 of the 8th edition, Mr. Sussman talks about the, let's see here, wide-angle lenses. So, for wide-angle use with the Leica, there is the excellently corrected 35mm Sumeron f2.8 and the 35mm Summilux f1.4 and the 28mm Elmert f2.8. For the Nikon, there is the 35mm Auto Nikkor f2.8, one of the finest lenses of its kind. Okay, so since this book was published in 1973, Mr. Sussman could only have been referring to this lens right here. Significantly throughout the book, Sussman talks about optical designs from Leica and Zeiss. Nikon is the only Japanese company worth mentioning, and the fact that this lens was specifically mentioned, I feel, is significant. In addition, one of the best places for information online about Nikon lenses and the history of their development is the 1001 Nights blog. I call it a blog. It's really a series of essays. I think it's been up there since before blogs were blogs, I think. I'll put a link to it down below. But I want to read to you from the paragraph which explains the optical differences between the various versions. So, the first Nikkor S, which was the predecessor to this, looks like a combined Tessar-type lens to which a front converter has been attached. This was the basic lens configuration of wide-angle lenses for SLRs. However, the Tessar-type design could not overcome certain aberrations produced in the front converter element and thus failed to live up to expectations. So the predecessor to this lens failed to live up to expectations. The next version of the Nikkor S, this one, adopted a master lens similar to a Gauss type to boost correction of spherical aberrations, coma, and astigmatism. This later design eliminated the element in front of the diaphragm that was relatively ineffective in correcting aberrations and instead used a convex element behind the diaphragm to provide a streamlined lens configuration. Okay, moving on. The new Nikkor, and new Nikkor in this blog refers to the K series. New meaning the new rubber focusing ring. The new Nikkor, or the K series, developed more than 10 years after the first and later versions of the Nikkor S auto lenses, features a sophisticated lens configuration providing the best possible retrofocus type 35mm lens system. The most important feature of this lens configuration is the addition of two thick lenses behind the front concave element. By adding these thick lenses, Nikon was able to reduce the size of the lens system. The benefits of thick lenses, such as adopted in this lens, were discovered during the development of ultra-wide angle lenses. Furthermore, the second thick lens element has a concave front surface and a concave back that corrects distortion, a feature that has had a major impact on the success of this lens. The new Nikkor 35-2.8, this one, better compensates for other aberrations, although its best feature is that it corrects distortion almost entirely. This model successfully overcomes the drawback of retrofocus type lenses, which in theory inherently induce barrel distortion. Okay, so Nikon's optical engineers are very proud of these two lenses. This one represents a significant improvement over its predecessor, was specifically mentioned by Aaron Sussman in his well-regarded and very popular handbook of the time. And then Nikon's optical engineers basically tell us that this represents the pinnacle of retrofocus lens design in this focal length. Now, the 1001 Nights entry that I just read to you makes no mention whatsoever of this lens's successor, the late AI and AIS version, the 5-element version. I suspect that is because, for reasons maybe having to do with cost, I don't know, Nikon replaced this formula with a 5-element design, similar if not identical to the Series E, an act which Nikon lens engineers probably regarded as shameful and so therefore not worth mentioning. If you read through the 1001 Nights blog, it becomes very clear that Nikon's optical engineers were adamant that the Nikkor line must remain optically superior to the Series E. They mention that numerous times throughout these blogs. So these are the two 35mm f2.8 lenses to have. This one you can find for around $100, sometimes a little bit less. This one goes for $125 to $150, right in that range right there, for something in nice, good clean shooting condition like you see here. All right, so I hope you learned something. I hope you spend your money wisely while you are collecting Nikon gear. And please check the links down below for my self-published book and the Nikkor lens blog, which I mentioned. Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.